Hi, my name is Michael, and this is my concept video for a PC game called Radio General that I'll be making, and this is the first of many devlogs I'll be recording, giving that a shot. Hopefully I'll be able to do, one every week or two. First, let's talk about some background. I love real-time strategy games, and I've played a lot of them. StarCraft 1 and 2, Warcraft 3, Men of War, Company of Heroes War Game. They're all great. But there's one thing that's kind of weird in RTS games, that's real-time strategy games. It always kind of bugged me that you're this omniscient being who floats above the battlefield, able to see everything instantly, and to also give commands to your units instantly. This is fun, but it isn't very realistic. And that's okay for many games, as realism doesn't necessarily equal fun. But despite that, there's a lot of World War II games that claim to be realistic, and yet they miss an incredibly important part of warfare, which is the line of communication, and the fact that, you aren't some godly being floating above the battlefield. So, let's talk about World War II. And really this applies to other more modern wars as well. Generals and commanders were not on the front lines. You weren't this guy who ran forward with a gun, to attack the enemy. No, you were some guy either in some command room, miles away from the front, or in some tent. And the way you gave orders, at least during World War II, was through radios. And sometimes, it would take time for these orders to reach the units you're trying to contact, and sometimes these orders may never even reach the front line. Sometimes troops will disobey or ignore the orders that they are given. So, units didn't respond instantly to what they were told to do. So I thought to myself, can I make a game solely about giving orders? Can I make a game that actually captures the feeling of what it was like to be a general in the Second World War? And in these pictures here, you can see these command rooms that I was talking about, Allied command rooms. And that's would be the setting for my game. This would be a strategy game that focuses on strategy and maybe some high-level tactics, but would involve no micromanagement like you would see in StarCraft 2 nowadays, or League of Legends. Because as a general, you aren't close enough to the action to be able to give those orders or know quite what the situation is like. So, enough backstory. Let's get to the game itself. I'm now presenting you a mock-up of what I would like the interface to look like, though, keep in mind that this is crappy art that I just made and, grabbed off the internet, so it's not going to look very professional or anything. Okay, so, it's the Second World War. You were a general sitting in front of a map, and you have a radio, which we can see in the bottom left. You also have some pens and markers. Your job is to win the battle. It's a very simple idea, and the interface for the user will resemble sort of those command rooms we saw in the previous slides. Like other real-time strategy games, you will have units to command, and so will the enemy, but unlike these other strategy games, you won't be able to see them because you're in a tent miles behind the front lines. Your only link to the battlefield is the radio. You have to be told what's going on by your units. Most of the time your units will tell the truth, but sometimes they will get confused and panic. For example, they might panic when they retreat and get lost. Then you'll have to figure out where they are based on what they tell you. Another example is they might claim they're under attack from several tank squads, when in fact there's only a single vehicle attacking them. Units will often exaggerate the threat they're under and request reinforcements prematurely, as, they would do in real life. The way you'll command these units is also through the radio. You'll be able to give simple commands, such as move to Cherbourg, or dig in, or ask them what their status is. These orders will mostly be focused around movement, as you can't really do too much microing since you can't see where units are, unlike in other strategy games. So, back to the basic premise, the user will have a radio, a map, some markers, and they will also have some icons, which they can move around the board like in those World War II strategy rooms with those little shuffle paddles, where they can push those little icons around. And it will be up to the player to keep track of where their units are, as well as where the enemy has been reported to be. This is what I'm imagining the game to look like while being played. The players will have to move these, unit icons around where they think they and the enemy is. And they'll also be able to draw on the map using the markers, so you can plan out your attacks and also make notes such as when was the last time this tank squadron was spotted, or where you think the enemy is, or what they're doing, such as holding position, or maybe even some questions like where is one of your units who's gone lost and you have no idea where they are. Units will also send you status reports occasionally of what they're doing if it's worthwhile. So here we can see this unit here probably is engaging one infantry company at Bershau, and that sounds pretty useful. That unit knows where he is, and hopefully his information will be reliable, but you can't count on that. So why would you buy and play this game? This is what are called hooks, which are the selling points of your game. What's unique about it? Why would I want to play this game? Well, I did make that statement in my opening slide of that this is probably the most realistic strategy game ever made about World War II. And it's hard to argue with that, since most strategy games just gloss over the whole command structure and line of communication thing, whereas this game is entirely built around the fact that you're just a guy in a tent that's nowhere near the fighting, and it's up to you to coordinate everyone. Another hook will be that the radio mechanic is pretty unique. I've never seen it done in any other game that I know of, and it is your only connection to the battlefield. So you'll receive both news from your units, and it will also be the only way that you command your units. The game won't require any fast-paced micromanagement, which can definitely be a turn-off for new players. I know, certainly for me, when playing StarCraft 2 or League of Legends, you really have to click the buttons very quickly, whereas this game will be a lot slower paced and more relaxing. Hopefully new players will be able to enter the genre a bit more easily than other fast-paced strategy games. The main skill of the game, or hopefully the main skill, will be information management, and that was the previous slide, where you have to keep very careful notes of what your units are up to, what's their status, and where you think the enemy is. So it's all about noting this information down efficiently. And of course, this to me sounds like a pretty unique experience. Again, I've never heard of any game quite like this, where you're a general and you really have no idea what's going on with the units. You have to rely on what they tell you, and you just gotta hope that the orders that you give are good, even though you don't have much information to work with. So what are some cons about this idea? So the art isn't flashy. It's not going to be a very nice looking shooter or even nice looking strategy game. It's just going to be a map. It's going to be pretty minimalist. It's going to be a map with some markers, some drawing. That's about it. Hopefully the map will look nice once I get some art for that. A big problem that I foresee is the fact that there's no immediate feedback. So you won't actually know how well you're doing until the battle's over. You won't even know if you've won or lost until the battle is over. And at the end of the battle, there'll be a replay, so you can actually see what happened. But until that point, you're really just shooting in the dark. You don't really know. You can't see the whole picture. And so that could definitely be off-putting for some players, playing a match that maybe takes 20 minutes, only to find out that you've lost, and that can be pretty disheartening because you're not sure why you lost or what the enemy's up to. It might feel unfair. We'll just have to see. It is also a strategy game, and although I love strategy games, it's pretty apparent, I've done some studies of sales figures, that of all the video game genres, strategy certainly is near the bottom in terms of number of units sold. So it's not exactly a high-selling genre, unlike shooters or action games. Those are pretty popular. Also sports games, they're also pretty popular. So who's the intended audience for this? Well, it's not too surprising, but definitely real-time strategy fans who don't like microing. So those are the people who'd be off-put by how quickly you need to control press the buttons and keystrokes in StarCraft 2 and League of Legends. Will be a much slower paced game. Don't know how competitive it'll be. We'll have to see how that goes. Definitely World War II enthusiasts. Hopefully, I'll try to make the game as historically accurate as possible, and even the whole concept of, again, being a general with a radio, that's pretty authentic. So I'm hoping that crowd will enjoy the game. Also, it's a pretty unique idea, so maybe people who just look for interesting indie games will be into it. That's the hope, at least. Okay, let's talk about the nitty-gritty. It'll probably be for Windows, Mac, and Linux, the usual PC platforms. I'll be making it using Unity just because I've worked with it before, I'm comfortable with it, and it can be exported to a ridiculous number of different platforms. And for now, I'm just going to focus on the single player. That's not to say that there won't be more features later, as I'm about to talk about though. One very cool feature that I could see would be a load of fun would be voice commands. And so you'd plug in your microphone, and instead of selecting commands through a menu to send to your troops, you'd actually shout out your orders and ask Able Company, what's your status? You know, Bravo Company, move up to Cherbourg. You say that out loud. I think that would be incredibly cool and would definitely add to the experience. I could also see that being incredibly fiddly though, and we'll have to check out how good the voice recognition libraries are, or at least the free ones. We'll have to see how useful they are. I would also like to add multiplayer, but you know, again, that is a big time sink. It would take a lot of work, and even for something just as simple as this, it would still be a lot of work. So, you know, set your sights low. That's always my advice to anybody making a game. But I'd like to. We'll have to see how much effort it will take for that. As well, a map editor would be very cool. Letting users create their own maps. That could be a lot of fun because there's a lot of battles in World War II, and I can't possibly cover all of them. And I'm sure a lot of the enthusiasts will want to see one specific battle, a favorite battle of theirs covered. So letting people create their own maps would be awesome. Maybe integrate that into the Steam Workshop. That would be a lot of fun. User-created content's a really cool idea, and letting, you know, other people make your game for you, that's always a bonus. Alright. So that about wraps up my concept video about this game, Radio General. So I'll have some links in the description and of course annotated throughout the video. If you'd like to follow along, I'll have a newsletter mailed out maybe once a month to check on our progress. And if you have any ideas, feel free to shoot me an email at michael@foolishmortals.net. I'd love to hear feedback or suggestions or whatever else you'd like to see in this game. Alright, thanks for listening.